All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, advocates and change makers. I am Lady T. Thompson. I'm the chair of UNA Women, and welcome to this special edition of our CEDAW Town Hall entitled Empower Resilience, Elevating Women in the Eye of Crises. And today we gather to shine a light on the crucial and often overlooked roles women and children play in the face of conflict, crises, and climatic emergencies. UNA Women stands at the forefront of advocating for gender equality in all its diversity, empowering women, and promoting human rights. And at the heart of our mission includes CEDAW, a United Nations treaty, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, a cornerstone in the fight for women's rights and gender equality. In today's tumultuous world where 40 through 43 conflicts rage, yes, and that does include Haiti, women and children bear the brunt of violence, displacement, instability. They face unique challenges and vulnerabilities, yet they also embody remarkable resilience and strength. Our town hall aims to explore these dimensions, bring into the forefront the voices and stories of those who work and stand with these resilient crises and women. We all should care. How do conflicts and crises disproportionately affect women and children? How does it impact women differently? What role can young people play in supporting crises response effectively, and why? So join us for an enlightening hour of discussions and insights and CEDAW awareness. Together, yes, together, we can drive change, empower resilience, and elevate women in the eye of crises. Thank you for being here, and let's embark on this journey of discovery and empowerment together. So I'm going to turn it over to Monica.
Thank you, Lady T, and welcome all. I just wanted to give a brief overview for those who have been keeping up with the SFOPS bill because it is relevant to some of the pieces we'll be discussing during this session. But thanks to our efforts from our lobby day, we had UNA USA members go to Capitol Hill. And there were 5 extreme anti-UN amendments that were defeated and prevented from being included in the state foreign operations and related programs fiscal year 2025 bill. That's what SFOP stands for. And so this is actually all very new information as of this morning. So that's why there's lots of words on this slide. But this morning, the House did vote on the SFOPS bill as a whole. It passed, and it does include extremely aggressive and historic cuts to the UN. But as we all know, the bill has to pass both the House and the Senate. And so we're going to turn our attention to the Senate now, and more information will come in the future. But again, just wanted to give a brief update on this because it is relevant to the discussion we'll be having today. So thanks, Lady T.
All right, next slide, please. So if you know me, I love icebreakers. I love icebreakers. So today we're going to kick off one, true or false. Next slide, please. Women, are only passive victims in conflicts. What do you think? Let us know what you think in the chat, true or false. The fact is, women play multiple roles in conflicts, crises, including being combatants and peace builders and leaders. So according to UN Women, in some countries, women constitute up to 30% of combatants in armed groups. However, the contributions to peace building are often overlooked. Next, number 2, true or false? Next slide.
Sorry, Lady T, our chat is having some issues. Apologies, everyone, but you can message the host, so either me, Lady T, or Julianne, your answers, and we'll check them. But thanks all.
All right. So number 2, women are not significantly affected by conflicts compared to men. What do you think? Are women not significantly affected by conflicts in comparison to men? I think that's a great question. Well, the fact is, women face unique and severe impacts during conflicts, including gender-based violence, economic disempowerment, and disruptions of health services. All right. So on to number 3. I know you're still putting things in the chat. So number 3, post-conflict recovery efforts benefit women equally. What do you think? What do you think? We want to know. We want to know. What are we seeing, Julianne?
A few mixed answers, but mostly I think it's correct.
Okay. So women often face significant barriers in post-conflict recovery, including access to resources, justice, and economic opportunities. All right. We're going to move on to number 4.
Do you see it, Lady T? Is it up there?
It says the same one, right?
Oh, let's see.
Gender.
That was my. There we go. There we go.
Okay, women leads to women. Okay, one second. Oh, okay. So we'll go to yes. Women's experiences and needs and conflicts are homogeneous. What do you think? True, false, maybe, you don't know? The fact is, women's experiences and conflicts vary widely based on factors like age, ethnicity, disability, and socioeconomic status. So that is a varying fact. All right. Number 5, last but definitely, okay. All right. So we're going to, at this point, segue over to our CEDAW Town Hall. And I want to take this wonderful time to talk about what is CEDAW and why the things that we just talked about, how those were highlighted, because we need comprehensive approaches to address the multifaceted impacts of crises, conflict, and climatic disasters on women as mandated by CEDAW. So let's get to it. Next slide, please. What is CEDAW? Well, CEDAW, next slide, please, is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. It's an international treaty adopted in 1979 by the United Nations General Assembly. And yes, in the US, our then president, Jimmy Carter, signed on to it. And it's often described as the International Bill of Rights for Women. So CEDAW defines what constitutes discrimination against women and sets up an agenda for national action to end such discrimination. Next slide, please. One of the important parts about what CEDAW is it has 30 articles. And in the articles, it helps to define what discrimination is against women. So CEDAW is the commonly known version of the Convention to Eliminate All Forms of Discrimination, but it defines discrimination against women in any distinction, exclusion, or restriction made on the basis of sex, which has the effect or purpose of impairing or nullifying the recognition, enjoyment, or exercise by women, irrespective of their marital status, on a basis of equality in comparison to men and women. So it's human rights, it's its fundamental freedoms. Next slide. So there have been 189 member states that have agreed to the definition of what discrimination against women is, the state obligations, the substantive equality. And when I say substantive equality, that means both the formal equality, which is equality in law, and the achievement equality, which is the actualization or of equality in fact, protection and promotions, and women's rights in variation. Next slide, please. But regrettably, not everyone has ratified, and ratified is adopted CEDAW. And that includes Palau is number one. Next is Iran. The third is Somalia. The fourth is Sudan. The fifth is Tonga. And wait for it, the United States of America. We have not ratified CEDAW. So in the chat, someone will put the articles, the 30 articles for CEDAW. So that's why we're here today, to talk about CEDAW and talk about the impact of women in crises, in the eye of crises. And so at this point, drum roll, please. Next slide. I'd like to introduce one of my favorite humans. And this young lady is exceptional, incredible, remarkable. I really don't have an adjective for her. I just recently found out the last 2 years that we have been working on CEDAW that she is a 2024 high school graduate from the UNA chapter in Westchester, and she has advocated directly with congressional leaders like Cory Booker. She has actively engaged in understanding how to navigate through the UN systems and trainings and going to the various camps and having many opportunities. But one of the more remarkable reasons why I love Julianne is almost 2 years ago, I had a fire. And she was one of the first people that sent over a gift card, because when you lose everything, so I can have my red lipstick on. So she's just a fantastic human being. And next week, she starts her classes at Princeton. She will be a 2028 graduate from Princeton. So I'm so happy that I've had the luxury, the privilege, and I'm humbled by having Julianne as my co-host, my co-chair for CEDAW. So I'm turning everything over to our lovely Julianne Wang.
Hi, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I'm so touched, and it's just always so great to work with UNA USA. This community is just very supportive, very uplifting, and I've always loved my work here. So I'm the Youth Affinity Group co-chair, and today I'm going to be moderating. And I'm going to be asking Dr. Glover some questions and also some to Lady T. Thompson as well. Next slide. I'm honored to introduce Dr. Malika Glover. So for the past 20 years, she has worked across many areas of public health and emergency management. She is a social epidemiologist by training. She has held positions with CDC, WHO, in addition to several academic institutions. She provides training on strategic leadership and works to develop and implement science-based approaches, program coordination, training, and global health security leadership. Dr. Glover has supported a number of high visibility and national special security events. She has extensive training and experience in social epidemiology, risk communication policy, planning and implementation, as well as community engagement, because that's what we're all about. Dr. Glover is trained to examine how cultural, economic, demographic factors, societal influences, and various levels of social organizations influence public health, and as well as the intersections with peace and security. So everyone, welcome Dr. Glover.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. This is really exciting for me. I love how you opened the meeting with the true or false questions. This is the first time I've actually been on one of these calls, so that was very enjoyable and very exciting. So thank you very much for having me. I Julianne, is this where I should say a few words about WCAPS and just kind of talk about conflict broadly before you ask me questions? Okay. Alrighty. So again, thank you for having me here. I'm delighted to join this call. I am here to represent WCAPS, or Women of Color Advancing Peace, Security, and Conflict Transformation. WCAPS, our main premise is that we believe that global issues demand a variety of perspectives, actions, and voices. Our mission is to advance the leadership and development of women of color in the space of global peace, security, and conflict transformation. When WCAPS was founded in 2017, we created a platform devoted to women of color that cultivated a strong voice and network for its members while encouraging dialogue and strategies for engaging in policy discussions on an international as well as domestic scale. It's not enough to just address the needs of women in general, but the participation of women, and especially women of color, in various spaces is also really critical. Identifying the different needs and inclusion of various voices of women has been an important part of our mission. That also means that it's really important for us to address the impact and the disproportionate impact that conflict and crisis situations have on women, girls, and children broadly. Some of the ways that crisis and conflict situations impact women and children is through violence and exploitation. Women and children are often targeted for violence, sexual violence, human trafficking, and exploitation. Gender-based violence trends to increase during conflicts and crises. Displacement. Women and children make up the majority of displaced populations, facing heightened risk in camps, during migration, and including lack of access to basic necessities and protection that is really important and critical for women and children, especially women and girls. Healthcare. Access to healthcare services, including reproductive and maternal healthcare, is severely disrupted, leading to increased maternal and infant mortality rates. Education. Children, particularly girls, are more likely to be pulled out of school during conflicts, affecting their long-term opportunities and development. Economic hardship. Women often face greater economic challenges, losing their livelihoods and becoming primary caregivers without sufficient resources. Psychological impact. The trauma from witnessing and experiencing violence, displacement, and loss significantly impacts the mental health of women and children with long-term consequences. And last but not least, exclusion from decision-making. Women and children are frequently excluded from peace-building, decision-making processes, limiting their ability to influence outcomes that affect their lives. These and many other factors highlight the need for targeted interventions to support and protect women and children in conflict and crisis situations. We've seen this in plenty of recent situations. There are many crises and conflicts going on in the world. COVID recently demonstrated the disproportionate impact on women and children when we have conflict and crisis and health outcomes. So overall, climate change, economic inequality, gender-based violence, and pandemics have wide-ranging impacts on individuals, both domestically and internationally, affecting their health, economic security, social relationships, and overall quality of life on a daily basis. And this significantly disproportionately impacts women and girls and children broadly. Addressing these complex challenges requires comprehensive, equitable, and inclusive approaches that prioritize the well-being and dignity of women and children in their communities.
Thank you so much for such a comprehensive introduction. So the Q&A is right after Lady T. Thompson just speaks really briefly.
All right, if we can put the slides up, I'm going to talk about CEDAW at the heart of crisis response and go over some facts real briefly. So drum roll, please. There are so many different elements as to why CEDAW matters in the heart of crises response, whether it's a health crisis, emergency, disaster, or conflict. And one of the first facts or first elements about why CEDAW matters is the economic impacts of conflicts on women are often long-term and can severely hinder their financial independence and economic opportunity. Now, I read a lot of reports, so I may give some reports, and if you need some answers afterwards, let me know, or if I need to recite it. One of my favorite reports about this particular fact is that the World Bank found women in crisis zones are 20% less likely to be employed compared to men. And the UN has estimated that the global economic cost of gender inequality just in the labor workforce has a valuation of $160 trillion. Yes, $160 trillion. So the connection to CEDAW is Article 11. And Article 11 of CEDAW requires member states to ensure women's right to work and the same employment opportunities as men, includes measures to eliminate economic discrimination. So that's number one. A second element is access to humanitarian aid for women in crises or conflict zones is often unequal, with marginalized groups facing significant barriers. A study by Oxfam revealed that women in marginalized communities are 50% less likely to receive humanitarian aid than their male counterparts. The UN has two reports that stipulates that less than 10% of humanitarian aid goes directly to women's organizations in conflict zones. And another report stipulates that minority groups in conflict or crisis zones are 40% less likely to receive humanitarian aid than other women. So my final and favorite report on this particular area is the Humanitarian Policy Group. They found that aid programs often fail to account for the specific needs of minority and marginalized women. So what's the connection to CEDAW? Well, Article 3, it requires states to ensure the development and advancement of women, including minority and marginalized populations through appropriate measures. Also, CEDAW Article 14 emphasizes the need to ensure that rural women are included in crises, climatic disasters, and conflict zones. So they need to have adequate access to living conditions, including access to basic services. So CEDAW matters. The third element regarding the heart of crisis response is women health needs. And Dr. Glover just really tapped on it. So health needs include reproductive health and maternal health, and they're often neglected in conflicts and crisis situations. We have two main reasons that I'd like to touch on. I'm so proud of UNA USA because we've had campaigns and discussions on this. Even at our leadership summit, when a woman is in a crisis situation, women still have periods. When women are in these situations, they still have to give childbirth. So the World Health Organization has reported that maternal mortality rates in conflict or crises affected countries are 2.5 times higher than the global average. And a report by Save the Children found that 60% of preventable maternal deaths occur in humanitarian settings. So what's the connection to CEDAW? Well, Article 12, it mandates that states ensure access to healthcare services, including family planning and reproductive health for women in crises and conflict situations. The fourth part of crisis response is conflicts severely disrupt girls' education. Dr. Glover tapped on that. So data from UNESCO reports that crises have forced 39 million girls out of school globally, 39 individuals. And the Malaya Fund found that girls in these crises areas are twice as likely to be out of school compared to boys. So what's the connection to CEDAW? Article 10. It emphasizes the right of women and girls to equal opportunities in education and the need to ensure access to education, even in conflict or crises settings. So number 5, women and girls are high risk at human trafficking in conflict zones, and they're often exploited for sexual and labor purposes. This is something near and dear to my heart. And I know that the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes has reported that 71% of trafficking victims globally are women and girls, and with conflict zones being major hotspots. But I want to dive a little deeper in this one. So when we think of 71% of trafficking victims, most people, the average person doesn't know that that is 28 million people. 28 million people. So 71% of 28 million people is approximately 19.88 million people that are trafficked are women. Think about that. Almost 20 million women, 20 million lives, 20 million mothers, sisters, girls, aunts, cousins. A report from the International Organization of Migration found that during human trafficking increases, 20 to 30% of them happen during and after conflicts. And that's because you have neighboring countries where people are going to escape these situations, and you have predators at these neighboring countries or areas. So what's the connection to CEDAW? Article 6. Yes, Article 6 of CEDAW requires member states to take measures to suppress all forms of trafficking in women and exploitation, and even that of prostitution. So number 6, women's needs and perspectives are often overlooked in peace agreements and conflict resolutions. Now, we understand that 76% of peacekeepers are men. But according to the UN Women, only 13% of negotiators and 6% of signatories in major peace processes from 1992 to 2018 were women. 6% of signatories. And the Council of Foreign Relations reports that women's participation in peace and progresses increase the likelihood of a peace agreement lasting more than 2 years by 20% when women are involved. So what's the connection to CEDAW? Well, Article 7 mandates women's participation in political and public life, including peace building and conflict resolution processes. So we need to be involved in peacekeeping and peace building. Number 7, sexual violence is often used strategically in conflicts to terrorize and control populations. Dr. Glover touched on that. And the United Nations Secretary General, he reported in 2020 that in conflict-related violence, it was documented that over 3,000 cases were verified. 3,000. So we know that it persists. And the World Health Organization estimated between 20 to 50% of women in conflict zones have experienced sexual violence. And the connection to CEDAW is Article 2, which requires states to take all appropriate measures to eliminate violence against women, including sexual violence in conflict settings. Now, I'm going to try to end on this one because I know that I don't want to go too over, and Julianne has these wonderful questions for us. So I'll give you two more. The next is the displacement of disproportionately impacts on women, making them more vulnerable to exploitation, abuse, and poverty. And there are a lot of contributing factors to this. So when you think about an internally displaced person, they're usually in a tent. And when they have to go and relieve themselves at night, women and girls, that have them vulnerable. So as of May 2024, the United Nations Human Commission on Refugees, they made a report, and it stated that there are approximately 120 million people, 120 million people forcibly displaced right now worldwide. And in this figure, about 68.3 million of these internally displaced individuals, persons, and 43.4 million are refugees and individuals of need of international protection. So when we think of crises, there are large populations of internally displaced persons found in many countries like Sudan, Syria, the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And Sudan in particular is experiencing significant internally displacement due to the current conflict, with an estimation of 9.1 million people within the country. And there are other significant displacements like the Gaza Strip in Myanmar. So we have wonderful countries, and I'm going to say this specifically of my knowledge, like on the continent of Africa, we have countries like Uganda who have been welcoming. They have the largest concentration on the continent of refugees. And the statistics that the United Nations Human Commission on Refugees found that displaced women are at higher rates of gender-based violence and often less access to basic rights. So again, I'll leave you with, what's the connection to CEDAW? Article 14 addresses the needs of every woman, including rural women, who are often disproportionately affected by displacement, and it emphasizes the need for protection and support. And so last, but definitely not least, women who are coping with mechanisms of resilience in crises, they vary widely based on their personal, social, and economic circumstances. And a study from the Women's Refugee Commission found that social support networks are crucial for women's resilience in crises, yet many lack access in these networks. So what's the connection? Article 16, it emphasizes the need for the states to ensure women's access to social and economic resources, which are critical for building resilience and coping. And I like to say this, I'm so proud of UNA USA because we inspire, we educate, and we mobilize. And even as Monica kicked off with the SPOS, with what's going on here in our country in terms of funding the UN, we have to remember that human rights advocacy has a piece with CEDAW, and CEDAW is at the heart of crisis response. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lady T. That was amazing. So now I'm going to kick off the Q&A session. I'm going to be facilitating. And My first question is for Dr. Glover. So, you have much experience with public health and emergency management as a social epidemiologist. How have you seen women being underrepresented and disadvantaged in the IVE crisis?
Thank you for that question. Thank you, Lady T, for your presentation. Very informative. I would say broadly, the other underrepresentation is at all levels of participation. I think as a social epidemiologist, we understand broadly how community and family and all of the things around you that you depend on impact not just your decision making, but impact your response to crises. And so, from my perspective, and it's been my experience in the field, and from a research perspective, if you look at data that women and children are not involved at all levels of participation before, during, and after. And so it limits their ability to have their voice heard when it's most critical to take action, and also limits their protections during crises and events of heightened distress or displacement or whatever might be the situation at the time. And so it really is important that when we're managing crisis, that we are focusing on the capacity building of women and children, that we are ensuring that they are prepared and involved, and that we're also ensuring that they are well resourced, and that they and their communities are supported so that they can respond accordingly, prepare in advance, and also be able to mitigate those issues during, and also be prepared to um, bounce back. I know we like the word resilience, and I know some people don't like resilience because they're always like women have to be resilient. But really, I look at it from the perspective of more of a preparedness and resource standpoint, not how we sort of just battle through and like kill ourselves, but how are we resourced? And that really is sort of how I look at resilient from this perspective. What is it that we are ensuring women and children have so that they have the capacity to sustain themselves and be protected during these situations that where they tend to be underrepresented in crisis broadly.
Thank you so much for your answer. And I know that with these levels of social organizations, it ranges from small groups to all different complex systems. So thank you for touching upon that. My next question for you is, what are the most effective strategies in program coordination and global health security leadership for longer conflicts in your experience?
So relationships are really key. Continuous planning. So in emergency response, we have a planning P, which goes through all of these cycles of what to do in the process of planning. There are things that need to be done in the beginning before things happen, like when we plan for pandemics that we expect to come. There are things we do during the crisis, and there are things that we do after the crisis. But it involves not just continuous planning, but leadership um, and community. That's government, those are grassroots organizations, actual villages, communities, the people. So it really does require a level of communication and respect on all of those levels in an ongoing way. So if you're talking about a long-term crisis, which could be a pandemic or a war or anything of those, any of those scenarios, it does require an ongoing communication with the government, with the communities, with individual in those communities, with community level leaders, with grassroots organizations, all throughout the process, because things evolve, things change, needs shift. And so what is going to be necessary for resources will also shift. So it's really important that that ongoing community, government, leadership, collaboration, and communication is continues to grow, because without relationships, there are just broadly breakdowns in ability to provide organizations and communities with the resources they need when they're in a crisis situation, especially when it's long term. People get fatigued, people get concerned about where money's going to come from, all kinds of things tend to take place. And so over the course of those crises, the needs of the individuals that are being impacted by that crisis change. And so that ongoing relationship building and communication and shifting of needs and resources is really critical when you're in situations that are long term like that.
Thank you so much for your expertise. So my next question is, how can we integrate gender equality into crisis management, peace and security, or response efforts more effectively?
So at a very fundamental level, women have to be involved. There's no way around it. Women have to be involved. I mean, we've signed the Women, Peace, and Security Act. We have U.S. strategies on women, peace, and security, and then we have government organizations like USAID, Homeland Security, Department of State, all working on implementation strategies for effectively putting those things into place. But the reality of it is at the end of the day, if women are not involved in this planning, then you've left out their voice completely. And so that really is critical, and at the crux of what is necessary to make sure that women and children's needs are effectively addressed in crisis. And so when we are looking at the implementation of things like the national action plans, we have to ensure that women are involved in those discussions. They have to be in leadership roles in the organizations that are implementing those strategies. And just broadly, women have to be present and at the table. Their voices have to be heard. They don't need someone to stand in for their voice. There has to be planning for women and children. And women need to have a voice in what that looks like going forward.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna ask questions to you and Lady T. Thompson towards the end, but now I'm going to ask Lady T. Thompson a few questions. So just really briefly, Lady Thompson is a distinguished advocate for human rights and labor trafficking prevention. With over 20 years of experience, she has empowered women and marginalized communities in 14 countries, impacting the lives of over 1 million people. She is renowned for transforming startups into successful enterprises, as well as entrepreneurship empowerment, but fostering international collaborations. So globally, Thompson trains youth, women, labor trafficking survivors to promote financial independence. And as a chairperson for UNA Women, for the 20,000 members of UNA USA, she promotes gender equality and SDGs. And all of her amazing work has earned her numerous accolades, including the Black History Achievement Award from former President Obama. So everyone, she's amazing to work with, but also really amazing to interview as well. So some questions for you. Why do you think CEDAW and conflict are so intricately linked in the context of crises for women? Can you share specific examples where the principles of CEDAW have been crucial in addressing the needs of women during conflicts?
Well, I'm going to start off with thank you for the question. And in March of this year, I started off saying women hold up half the sky. It's a proverb, right? So if we're 50% of the population, we need to be actively engaged. So CEDAW and conflict are intrinsically linked in all situations, whether it's the exasperation of pre-existing gender inequalities or creating new vulnerabilities for women and girls. So during conflicts, what happens is women, they face these increased violence and sexual violence and displacements and loss of livelihood. So CEDAW provides a framework, and I believe that there needs to be more guiding principles. No, I believe that CEDAW is the guiding principle, and there needs to be more protocols and recommendations. And one of my examples would be the Syrian conflict. So proud of the CEDAW committee because the CEDAW committee had got involved with all parties regarding that conflict to ensure the protections of women's rights. They highlighted the need of women's participation in the peace process and the post-conflict reconstruction. So the advocacy matters for women, and we have to be involved, just as Dr. Glover just said. Another example, when I think about this, is South Sudan. In South Sudan, CEDAW principles, they were crucial in addressing the needs of the effects of the conflict, and the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on peace, women, peace, security, it was rooted in the CEDAW. And so it helped with the peace negotiations and the establishment of gender responsive programs of survivors of gender-based violence. So those are two examples that I can think about, but we have to be actively engaged. We have to have these deliberate discourse moments like we're doing right now.
Yes. And as you mentioned, with one specific conflict, there are 43 ongoing conflicts, not including Haiti. So, what will happen to a generation of young females who experience deprivation and devastation? How can the international community better support these young women and children?
Well, I say this all the time, two things. You can't be what you can't see, and no one leads permission to lead. So we have these young females who's experiencing all this deprivation and devastation due to conflicts, crises, and climatic disasters with severe long-term consequences. And so with the disruption of education, poor health, and increased vulnerabilities of exploitation and abuse, the international community and communities within themselves, we have to be stakeholders, and that we have to have stratagems that include education. We have to support in the US funded the United Nations. So that's number one. But we have to do that by supporting programs like UNICEF's Education in Emergencies, which is initiatives that help learning opportunities for children in crises affected areas. We have to support mental health and psychological support, because guess what? There's trauma and coping mechanisms and re-traumatization that these young people are going to experience. And another example is the International Rescue Committee. They offer comprehensive programs for children and adolescents in these crises areas.
Thank you so much. And if anyone has any questions for Dr. Glover or Lady T. Thompson, you can put them in the chat. So now I'm gonna ask questions to both Dr. Glover and Lady T. Thompson. What are some words of advice and inspiration for young girls aspiring in your field?
Lady T, you want me to go first?
Yes, please, please. We've been waiting on this question, this answer.
So first I want to say that the world is more peaceful, safe, and prosperous when women can fully participate in all facets of economic, social, and political life, and their human rights and humanity are respected. So I want to say that first. And I hope that that actually, provides some level of inspiration as well, because I think it's really important for us to see our value. That's at the top of my list of inspiration, is to see our value. I think in general, I get excited about having conversations about women and girls and sort of being in this space. And I think that one of those things is, I'm an epidemiologist, I'm a scientist, and so I love talking about women and girls in STEM and all of that. And from my perspective, I just feel like we are awesome at running the world. And so my advice for women and girls broadly is to really just, let your imagination flourish and grow. Your imagination is what is going to move this world to the next level. It is what is going to sustain us. But I also recognize that the crises and all of these things that women and girls experience also sometimes dampen our imaginations. And so I still want to encourage us to, especially girls, as they're growing up, encourage them to really imagine and just reach for the stars and the moon and hold up that sky, because it's ours to hold up, and really just continue to be involved in peace and security, domestic and international. There's no false line between those two. They both impact each other, and we really need to be supportive of women and girls broadly in all spaces of public health, peace, security, conflict transformation, all of those. So I really encourage women and girls to just really flourish and grow and be free and rest. That is also something that I'm also an advocate for, is rest. And we don't rest so that we can do more. We rest because we have the human right, and that is a right that we have, is to rest. And we are not machines. And there's no reason for us to feel that we need to bear the burden and the brunt of the world. And so it really is important for us to take time for ourselves, and to really be supportive of our own spirits, and our growth, so that we can continue to flourish and continue to imagine and continue to do all of the things that we ever want to do.
Bravo, bravo. Same question?
Yes.
So you covered everything that I would say, yeah, in that response. The only thing that I would add to it is the importance of advocacy and policy change and being actively engaged with policy makers and being actively engaged with policy making also. And that could start at your local level, from the school board to voting to participation in things at the local level with your municipality to the state level to the national, international levels. We need to be actively engaged. And so in that engagement, we can now help prioritize gender sensitive responses. So the second thing that I would add to that in terms of creativity, right? You talked about creativity, Dr. Glover, and a lot of the programs I've done, I love to use that analogy. If you ask women, you get a group of them together, and a lot of the things are facilitated. You ask how many people in the room are creative. Like 80% of the people will raise their hand and say they're creative. But it's the same level of ingenuity. It's the same level of reimagining that is required to bring advocacy and change laws and be an active, positive participant as a stakeholder wherever you are. And then the last thing that I would add to that is don't be afraid to talk to the media. Don't be afraid to tell stories. Don't be afraid to engage your community to raise awareness about whatever is going on. So that in and of itself can inspire action. And we have so many tools, like the phone is a tool. So technology is a tool. You can use social media campaigns. You can use platforms. I'm so proud of UNA USA. Yesterday, with everything that's been going on with the 75 different amendments that got passed in the House, my mother asked me, how many calls did you make? How much was the output? And it really went out to over 12,000 people, me encouraging people to call their congressional leaders. And I'm not making it about me, but I'm using that as example of storytelling. You can tell a story right where you are, and it doesn't require anyone's permission to be actively engaged.
Thank you both for your amazing responses. And unfortunately, our time is up, but please email any of us for any follow-ups because I do see a few questions in the chat. So we're going to just transition into the closing. Oh, yes. So first, there is a petition. So I'm going to quickly just send this in the chat. Please feel free to share and to sign. Okay. Next.
Next, if you can take out your phones, if you have a mobile device, and click that QR code, come and listen to UNA Women Podcast. We have some wonderful stories from Global Goals ambassadors, from wonderful organizations and leaders that's mobilizing change.
That's me. Hi. So, just really briefly, I did want to thank so much Dr. Glover and Lady T, for being excellent speakers and bringing so much insights. And honestly, the work that you both do is so inspiring. So we are so grateful to hear about it and to kind of have just, again, even small insights into what you're doing, and how inspiring you both are. So thank you. And that being said, for anyone who's looking to kind of take an action, even just right now, this is a really excellent way to support women in crisis situations. As you all might know, UNFPA is one of the leading organizations that does assist women in crisis situations. And this is a petition. If you use the QR code, it comes up with a letter that you can send to your congressperson that just says, please fully fund UNFPA. So please feel free to do that. And it's, again, an excellent way to advocate for women right now. And as I mentioned, we will be continuing to look at the SFOPS bill. So there's more to come on that to see what happens with the Senate and as far as the funding passing. And I'll hand it over to Lady T for the final.
As we conclude this powerful and enlightening session, I wanted to extend our deepest gratitude to Dr. Glover and Julianne and each and every one of you who have joined today and those who'll be listening afterwards. But Dr. Glover, your expertise and insights have enriched us all from our understanding and the commitment to advocating for women's rights in the eye of crises. And Julianne, thank you for your passion and your dedication. And thank you, UNA USA, for allowing us to have this platform to do this. But guess what? We're not over. You too, if you're not a UNA USA member, this is the opportunity. That's right, unausa.org. Please, we encourage you to go on and become a member. And you can follow us. If you also have your mobile devices, you can go to Instagram to UNA.women, and join the UNA Women's Affinity Group, our deliberate discourses regarding women and CEDAW. And we hope to see you soon. So wherever you are, we wish you the best. And remember, together, we have explored the pressing issues that women and children face in crises, and we have the commitment to elevate one another, even empowering resilience, elevating women in the eye of crises. So let's carry this forward, and thank you with much gratitude and determination. All the best.